I turned 70 in a house that never truly felt like mine. It sat in a Phoenix suburb where the streets were too clean and the smiles were too practiced, where every yard was trimmed into obedience and the sun made even the shadows look tired. Stucco walls, clay-colored roof, a quiet cul-de-sac that promised peace the way a brochure promises paradise. I bought that peace. I signed for it. I paid for it. I kept paying for it long after my knees started aching when I climbed the stairs. People think a paid-off home means safety. They don't understand that safety isn't drywall and mortgage statements. Safety is being wanted. Safety is a voice calling your name and meaning it. Safety is not feeling like the only thing you contribute can be measured in dollars and square footage. The dining room was full that night. Not packed, but full enough to feel like a performance. Neighbors I waved to but never really knew. Couples from my wife's circle who always found a reason to mention their vacations. A cousin who only showed up for milestones. A few friends from my old life, my real life, before I sold my business in Denver and let the desert swallow the last pieces of who I used to be. I remember standing in the kitchen doorway for a moment before I walked out, listening to the buzz of conversation, the clink of glasses, the thin, bright laughter that sounded like it came from the throat instead of the chest. There was the smell of roasted meat and sugar frosting and perfume. Someone had put on soft music, classy, background, safe. Everything about the night was designed to look like a celebration. But even then, I felt the imbalance. Like a picture frame hanging slightly crooked. Like a floorboard that flexes under your weight and makes you wonder how long it's been rotting. My wife had insisted on a party. 70 is important, she said, as if numbers could command respect. She moved through the house all day like a manager setting up an event, adjusting napkins, correcting angles, wiping already clean countertops. She barely looked at me. When she did, it was the kind of look you give a piece of furniture you're proud to own. Polished, useful, placed exactly where it belongs. Chloe and Madison arrived together. They always arrive together, like a unit, like a verdict delivered in two voices. They're my stepdaughters. I've been in their lives long enough that strangers assume I'm their father, and I never corrected them. For years, I wore that assumption like armor. I told myself it meant I belonged. I told myself it meant I mattered. I told myself the love would come later, the respect would come later, the gratitude would come later. Like some delayed payment that would finally clear. They swept and dressed like they'd stepped out of a catalog. Hair perfect, smiles sharpened, perfume expensive. Their husbands trailed behind, both of them with the same look men get when they've learned which side of the room holds the money. Quick handshake for me. I sliding away too soon. Bodies angled toward my wife, toward the center of the real family. They were polite, always polite. Politeness is what people use when they don't want to be accused of cruelty. Chloe kissed my cheek. Madison patted my shoulder like I was an aging dog. "Happy birthday," they said, in voices that sounded rehearsed. Their eyes were already scanning the room, counting witnesses. I should have understood then. I should have understood years ago, because this wasn't new. It was only clearer. For years I helped them. Not once. Not twice. A lifetime of yes. I paid for Chloe's college when her scholarships didn't cover the extras. I paid for Madison's grad program because she said it would change everything. I paid for wedding upgrades that turned reasonable ceremonies into productions. I covered a down payment when one of their husbands swore he was finally stable and needed just a little push. I covered the debts when that stability turned into late notices and red stamps on envelopes. I watched money leave my hands like blood leaves an open wound. Steady, quiet, never dramatic until you realize you're weak. And I never threw it in their faces. I never demanded gratitude. I thought love was built through sacrifice. I thought if I stayed long enough, gave enough, endured enough, I would eventually stop feeling like a guest in my own home. I even sold my business in Denver. My pride, my identity, the thing I built with my own hands, because my wife said the girls needed us closer. First, it was Florida. A fresh start, she called it. More family time, she said. So I uprooted myself, left everything familiar, and followed them like a man chasing approval. When Florida became inconvenient, When they decided they didn't like the traffic, the humidity, the neighbors, the schools, the mood of the sky, we moved again. Arizona this time. Phoenix suburbs. Because Chloe said the cost of living was better. Because Madison said it was good for the kids. Even though neither of them ever asked what was good for me. It was always framed as family. Always. But family, I was learning, can be a word people use when they want your compliance. That night, the table was set like a magazine spread. My wife's best china. Real cloth napkins. Candles. A cake big enough to feed an army. Frosted in white and gold. 70 in glittering numbers on top. Like a badge pinned to my chest. Everyone ate. Everyone smiled. They toasted. They talked about safe things. Weather. Grandkids. The new restaurant that opened near the mall. The conversation flowed around me like water around a rock. I could speak, yes, but I could feel how little it mattered. Then someone, one of the neighbors, clinked a spoon against a glass. Speech, she said. The girls have something planned. Don't you? Chloe and Madison stood up together. Of course they did. Their timing was perfect. Their posture straight. Their faces bright in that staged way. Chloe raised her wineglass. Madison reached into her purse and pulled out a set of keys. New keys. Shiny. Hanging from a fob that looked like it came from a leasing office. She held them up high, letting the light hit metal like it was jewelry. The guests leaned forward. Smiles widened. People love surprises. People love believing they're witnessing something sweet. I felt my stomach tighten. Chloe began. We wanted to announce something special tonight. Madison shook the keys slightly, letting them jingle. We finally found the perfect apartment. There were murmurs of approval. Couple of claps. Someone said, "Oh, how exciting." I saw it instantly. Not celebration. Not a gift. Not a surprise for me. Acclaim. Like they were raising a flag. Chloe's eyes flicked to me for half a second. Just enough to make sure I was watching. Then she looked back at the room, performing. It's downtown. Close to everything. It's going to be amazing. Madison smiled. And it's paid for. All settled. The guests laughed. Impressed. Wow, someone said. That's wonderful. They thought I was the hero behind it. They assumed this was my generosity. A father helping his daughters. A big heart. A proud man making his family comfortable. They didn't understand what those keys really were. Then one of them, one of Chloe's friends, I think, or maybe Madison's, smirked into her glass and said it like a punchline she expected everyone to love. You're useless now anyway, so we're getting grandma's inheritance. The room didn't go silent immediately. Silence takes time. First, there's the ripple. The delay. The part where people wait to see if the target laughs. A couple of guests chuckled. Uncertain. A nervous sound. A question disguised as humor. I didn't laugh. Chloe didn't laugh either. Madison didn't laugh. They just looked at me. Not with embarrassment. Not with apology. Not with that quick panic people get when someone crosses a line. They looked at me like they were watching a door close. I felt it then. Something heavy and cold settling in my chest. Not shock. Not disbelief. Confirmation. I stared at the keys in Madison's hand and understood that they weren't celebrating my birthday. They were celebrating my decline. They were celebrating the idea of me fading into the background, becoming quiet, becoming manageable, becoming a source of money without a voice. My wife stared down at her plate. Fork paused. Eyes lowered. Her silence wasn't confusion. It wasn't surprise. It was complicity. That was the moment the betrayal became clean. Sharp. Unmistakable. Chloe took a sip of wine and said, too casually, "It's only fair. Mom deserves it. And we're her daughters. Only fair." Like I was a ledger entry. Madison added, "And it's not like you need it. You're, you know." She gestured vaguely, as if 70 meant half dead. As if age made my needs disappear. As if my years were a reason to strip me down. I looked around the table. Faces frozen in polite horror. Eyes darting away. People suddenly fascinated by their plates. Nobody wanted to be the first to speak. I swallowed, feeling the taste of frosting and bitterness. My voice came out steady. Too steady. Well, I said, I'm glad you've planned ahead. Chloe smiled, relieved. She mistook my calm for surrender. Madison's shoulders loosened. She thought she'd won. They didn't see what was happening inside me. They didn't see the old man they called useless standing up in his own mind for the first time in years. Because I wasn't thinking about yelling. I wasn't thinking about making a scene. I was thinking about the years, the receipts, the times I apologized when I shouldn't have, the times I paid to keep peace, the times I convinced myself that being tolerated was enough. I saw it all clear as desert sky. I wasn't family to them. I was funding, a resource, a tool, a problem they were already solving. And as the party resumed in broken fragments, fake laughter returning, conversation limping back to life, I sat there and felt something I hadn't felt in a long time. Not rage. Freedom in its earliest form. A small, cold clarity. Because in that moment, while everyone pretended the insult hadn't happened, I understood the truth with the simplicity of a final sentence. If they could announce my worthlessness at my own table, in my own home on my 70th birthday, then they had already decided who I was to them. And now it was my turn to decide who they were to me. I didn't explode that night. That's what they expected. A red face, a shaking hand, maybe a lecture about gratitude. Something loud enough to turn their cruelty into a misunderstanding. I gave them none of it. After the last guest left and the door clicked shut, the house felt different. Not emptier, sharper. Like the walls had been listening for years and had finally decided to tell the truth. My wife gathered plates in silence. Chloe and Madison lingered near the counter, whispering to each other, occasionally glancing at me like I was a problem that had already been solved. You're not mad, are you? Madison asked finally, tilting her head in that practiced way she used when she wanted to sound innocent. I looked at her. Madison, the girl who once sat on my shoulders at a state fair. The teenager who cried in my car after her first breakup. The woman whose wedding I paid for when her biological father said he wasn't in a position to help. No, I said evenly. Why would I be? She smiled, relieved. It was just a joke. You know that. Chloe added, Dad, come on. You're being sensitive if you took that seriously. Dad, they only used that word when they needed something. I nodded slowly. Of course, just a joke. My wife finally spoke, her voice careful. They didn't mean it the way it sounded, but they did. I didn't argue. I didn't raise my voice. I walked past them, up the stairs, into my office and closed the door. The room smelled faintly of paper and old leather. Framed photos lined the wall, vacations I paid for, birthdays I funded, smiles I financed. I sat at my desk and stared at my phone for a long time. 70 years old. You learn something at 70. When people show you who you are to them, believe it the first time. I unlocked the screen, scrolled to my attorney's name. Harold Jensen had handled my business sale in Denver. Smart, efficient, loyal to the contract, not the emotion. My thumbs hovered over the keyboard. I typed 2 words. Start now. I stared at them for a full 10 seconds before pressing send. The message left my phone quietly. No thunder, no fireworks, just clarity. Because what Chloe and Madison didn't know, what none of them knew, was that I had already been uneasy for months. Their tone had changed long before that dinner. Conversations about long-term planning. Casual remarks about making things simple when the time comes. Questions about account structures that sounded more like audits than curiosity. I wasn't blind. A month before my birthday, I had sat in Harold's office and updated my will. I didn't announce it. I didn't threaten anyone. I simply adjusted reality. The proceeds from the property I'd sold in Colorado transferred to a veterans foundation. The shares I still held in the family company from Denver converted into an educational grant in my late mother's name. The savings they thought were waiting like a ripe orchard? Gone. Replanted elsewhere. I left enough for my wife to live comfortably. I am not cruel. I am not reckless. But the inheritance Chloe and Madison were toasting at my birthday table? It no longer existed. I leaned back in my chair and let the weight of that settle over me. For the first time in years, I felt ahead of them. Downstairs, I heard laughter. Then the front door opened and closed. My daughters were leaving. I walked to the window and watched their cars pull away from the curb. 2 sets of taillights glowing red in the Arizona night. They thought they had secured the future. They had no idea the future had already moved. My phone buzzed. Madison. I let it ring. Then Chloe. Ignored. Then my wife knocked softly on the office door. Are you coming to bed? In a minute, I said. When she left, I looked at the screen again. Missed call. Missed call. Missed call. The pattern started around midnight. Chloe. Madison. Chloe again. Voicemails stacking up. At 12:17 a.m., the first message came through. Dad, are you seriously upset? Call me. 12:24 a.m. Okay. If this is about the joke, you need to calm down. 12:31 a.m. Mom said you're being weird. What's going on? I didn't respond, because for once the silence was mine. By 1 a.m., the tone changed. Dad, call me back. By 1:15 a.m., Madison's voice had sharpened. You can't just ignore us. By 1:47 a.m., there was a hint of panic. Are you okay? Mom said you're not answering. I placed the phone face down on the desk. Let them wonder. For decades, I had answered every call, every crisis, every, can you help? Every, we're short this month. Every, it's just temporary. Now they could sit with uncertainty. I finally went to bed around 2 a.m. My wife lay stiffly on her side. Back to me. You're overreacting, she murmured into the darkness. I'm not reacting, I replied. She didn't understand the difference. By morning, my phone showed 68 missed calls. 68. From daughters who, 12 hours earlier, declared me useless. I made coffee slowly, sat at the kitchen table, watched the desert sunlight crawl across the tile floor. The phone buzzed again. Chloe. I let it ring, because this time the silence was not punishment. It was instruction. They were about to learn what it meant to speak carelessly to a man who had finally stopped needing their approval. And somewhere between call number 68 and the first sip of coffee, I understood something with brutal clarity. They never feared losing me. They only feared losing access. And for the first time in my life, I was ready to let them find out the difference. The calls stopped by afternoon. Not because they understood. Because they were regrouping. I knew that pattern. I had watched it for years. When money was involved, they coordinated. They compared notes. They decided on tone before approaching me. Soft first, then firm, then wounded, then angry. It was a cycle. Predictable. Efficient. By evening, Chloe showed up at the house. She didn't call first. She just arrived. I saw her car through the front window as I sat in the living room. The Arizona sky burning orange behind the palms. She stepped out fast, heels striking the driveway like punctuation marks. Determined. Controlled. She knocked once. Hard. I didn't rush. I stood slowly, walked to the door, and opened it. Her face looked different without the party lights and rehearsed smile. Tight. Strained. What's going on? She asked immediately, skipping pleasantries. Good evening to you too, I said. Dad, stop. Her voice wavered, but not with sadness. With urgency. Why aren't you answering your phone? I didn't feel like it. That's not funny. I'm not trying to be funny. She stepped inside without waiting to be invited. The entitlement was so natural to her she probably didn't notice it anymore. Moments later, Madison pulled into the driveway. Of course she did. They never came alone when stakes were high. Within minutes they were both standing in my living room. Their heels clicking on the tile I paid for. Their eyes scanning my face for signs of weakness. Madison crossed her arms. Mom said you've been acting strange. Strange? I asked calmly. You're not responding. You left the group chat. You won't answer calls. I nodded once. Yes. Chloe stepped closer. If this is about last night, you're taking it way too far. It was a joke. There it was again. The word they used to erase accountability. I looked at them carefully. The same faces I had defended countless times. The same eyes that had once looked to me for comfort. When someone says something cruel and calls it a joke, I said slowly, it doesn't make it less cruel. Madison's jaw tightened. You're 70. We were teasing. Teasing, I repeated. Yes, God, you're being dramatic. Dramatic. The word landed softly, but it carried years of dismissal behind it. I walked to the kitchen counter, poured myself a glass of water, and leaned against the edge. They followed me with their eyes like I was a judge about to deliver a sentence. You said I was useless, I said. Chloe exhaled sharply. Oh my God. Not this again. And you said you were getting Grandma's inheritance. Madison scoffed. Which is true. It's Mom's. I studied her face. And I'm what? Neither of them answered. I filled the silence for them. A placeholder? A bank? An obstacle? Chloe's voice hardened. You're twisting this. No, I said quietly. I'm clarifying it. The room felt smaller suddenly, the air heavier. Madison shifted tactics first. She always did. Look, she said, softening her tone. We're adults. We plan ahead. That's normal. It doesn't mean we don't care about you. I held her gaze. Care isn't measured by what you say when you think someone is dying. Her expression flickered. Chloe stepped in. Nobody thinks you're dying. You toasted my irrelevance at my own birthday. Silence. For the first time, uncertainty crept into their posture. Madison glanced toward the hallway, as if expecting Mom to step in and stabilize the situation. But my wife wasn't home. She had gone to a friend's house earlier. Distance. Strategic distance. You're overreacting, Chloe said again. But the confidence was thinner now. Am I? They hesitated. Then Chloe asked the real question. So what did you mean by that message to Mr. Jensen? There it was. The reason for the 68 missed calls. I didn't smile. I meant exactly what it said. Madison's face paled slightly. Start now? Start what? Adjustments. Adjustments to what? My estate. The word estate changed the temperature of the room. Chloe swallowed. You can't just change things because of a misunderstanding. I can. Madison stepped forward, voice rising. That's manipulative. No, I replied evenly. It's responsible. You're punishing us. I shook my head slowly. I'm correcting a mistake. What mistake? I confused access with love. The words hung between us like smoke. Chloe's composure cracked first. We have kids. We have expenses. You know that. Yes, I said. I've known that for years. And you're just going to pull everything because you got your feelings hurt? It wasn't anger now. It was fear. I'm not pulling everything, I said calmly. I'm redistributing it. Madison's voice trembled. To who? I didn't answer immediately. I let them feel the uncertainty they had forced me to feel for years. Finally, I said, to people who don't measure my worth by what they inherit. Their silence was no longer strategic. It was stunned. Chloe's eyes darted around the room like she was calculating damage. This is insane. No, I said softly. This is clarity. Madison's voice dropped into a whisper. You wouldn't really cut us out. I met her gaze. You already cut me out. The truth of it landed harder than any accusation. Chloe tried one last angle. We're your daughters. I held that sentence in my mind for a long moment. Are you? I didn't say it aloud. Instead, I said, respect matters more than blood. Madison's breathing quickened. So that's it? After everything? I almost laughed at that. After everything. Yes. After everything I paid. After everything I endured. After everything I excused. Yes, I said quietly. After everything. Chloe's eyes filled. But I knew the difference between wounded pride and broken heart. This is cruel, she whispered. No, I replied. Cruel was watching me age and deciding I was already gone. The front door opened behind them. My wife stepped in, stopping short when she saw the scene. "What's happening?" she asked. Madison turned toward her immediately. "He's rewriting the will." The word rewriting echoed in the house like a gunshot. My wife looked at me. I didn't look away. For the first time in decades, I wasn't negotiating. And in that moment, standing in the quiet house I had built, surrounded by people who had already begun dividing it, I understood something completely. The bill had come due. And for once, I wasn't the one paying it. My wife closed the door slowly behind her. She looked at Chloe, at Madison, then at me. "Rewriting?" she asked carefully. "Already done," I said. The words didn't rise. They didn't shake. They just existed. Madison's breath caught. "You already changed it?" "A month ago." The silence that followed was not theatrical. It was raw, unprepared. Chloe stared at me like she was seeing a stranger. "A month ago? Before my birthday?" "Before your speech," I corrected. My wife's face tightened. "You didn't tell me. You didn't ask. That's not fair." "No," I said quietly. "It isn't." Chloe began pacing, heels sharp against tile. "So where is it going?" she demanded. "If not to us, then where?" I watched her carefully. "Not grief, not hurt, loss calculation. To a veterans foundation," I said, "and to an educational grant in my mother's name." Madison's voice broke. "You gave it away?" "I invested it differently. You chose strangers over your family." I let that accusation sit between us. "Family," I said slowly, "isn't determined by who expects your death." My wife flinched at that. Chloe turned on her. "Mom, say something." My wife stepped forward, voice trembling. "This is extreme. We can fix this. You don't throw everything away over one bad night." "One bad night," I repeated. She hesitated. "You think it was just one?" The truth was heavy in the room. Years of small cuts. Years of subtle dismissals. Years of polite disrespect disguised as independence. Madison's eyes flashed. "We didn't mean it like that." "But you meant it," I said. Silence. Chloe's voice sharpened. "So what now? You just disappear?" The word echoed. Disappear. I walked past them into the hallway and opened the small guest closet. I pulled out a single overnight bag. "I rented a place," I said calmly. My wife stared. "What?" "In Santa Barbara." Madison blinked. "California?" "Yes." Chloe laughed once, sharp and disbelieving. "You're running away?" "No," I said evenly. "I'm relocating." "For how long?" my wife asked. "I don't know." Her voice broke slightly. "You can't just leave." "I can." "You're abandoning us." The irony almost made me smile. "I stopped funding you," I said quietly. "That's not the same as abandonment." Madison's voice rose. "You're punishing us." "No," I replied. "I'm removing myself." Chloe stepped in front of me, blocking the hallway. "You don't get to just walk out like some martyr." "I'm not a martyr." "Then what are you?" I looked at her for a long moment. "A man who finally understands his role." "And what's that?" "Optional." The word hit harder than shouting ever could. My wife's shoulders sagged. "This is humiliating." "Yes," I said softly. "It was." She knew what I meant. The table, the keys, the word useless. Madison's eyes glistened. "So you're choosing pride over family?" "No," I said. "I'm choosing dignity over access." Chloe's voice cracked. "We need you." There it was. Not love. Need. For what? I asked gently. Neither answered. Because they knew. For the house. For the stability. For the invisible safety net they had always assumed would hold. My wife tried once more. "We can talk. We can go to counseling. We can reset." I zipped the bag slowly. "You should have defended me when it mattered." Her eyes dropped. That was answer enough. The next morning, I left before sunrise. No dramatic farewell. No hugs. No apologies. Just the quiet click of the front door. The airport felt anonymous. Clean. Impersonal. Perfect. When the plane lifted off, I didn't look back at the desert. I looked forward. The house in Santa Barbara wasn't large. Just a small oceanfront rental. White walls. Salt in the air. Windows that opened to the sound of waves instead of rehearsed conversations. The first night there, I slept without interruption. No calls. No requests. No subtle expectations humming beneath the surface. On the third day, Chloe showed up. Of course she did. She stood on the porch with sunglasses and determination. "I overreacted," she said before I could speak. "We all did. It was just stupid. We didn't mean it." The ocean roared behind me. "Jokes don't sound that cold," I replied. Her shoulders softened. "We're under stress." So was I. "We didn't think you'd take it seriously. That's the problem." She stepped closer. "We love you." I held her gaze. "Love without respect is just dependency." Her eyes watered. I said, "I'm sorry. I heard you." She waited for something more. Forgiveness. Reversal. Restoration. I didn't offer it. "I sold the house," I said instead. Her face went pale. "What?" "Closed last week." "You can't." "I did." Madison called an hour later. Then my wife. Missed calls stacked again. I didn't answer. Instead, I walked down to the beach. I started fishing again. I rebuilt the small workshop in the garage. I reconnected with 2 friends from Denver who didn't ask me for anything except conversation. I stopped being dad who pays. I became a man who chooses who gets access to his door. The phone still lights up sometimes. Birthdays, holidays, financial questions. I let it ring, because I learned something at 70. Blood does not guarantee respect, and money does not purchase love. That night at my own table, when my daughters lifted keys like trophies and declared me useless, I lost something I had been clinging to for decades. The illusion. In its place, I gained something quieter. Freedom. I didn't seek revenge. I didn't scream. I didn't humiliate them in return. I simply stepped away from the role they assigned me. And now, when the ocean wind moves through my open windows and the phone vibrates on the kitchen counter, I ask myself one question. Was I wrong to stop paying for people who had already decided I was worth nothing? Or would you have endured it until the end?